My name is Nelson Andayi Havi. I was born in 1977 in a village within the then Kakamega District, and the village is called Muhila. In actual fact, I was born in Muhila Hospital. My parents, both of whom were primary school teachers, must have been teaching within that region at that particular time. And then they moved to Lukuyani Constituency, then a sub-location within Lugari division, but still within Kakamega District. And I spent most of my childhood life in a place called Nangili. Incidentally, I went to school in Nangili from nursery school all the way to class 8. Thereafter, I joined Musingu High School for my secondary education from 1992 and left Musingu High School in 1995. Stayed at home for almost 1.5 years, being the house help, fetching water, looking after cattle, looking after my siblings as I waited to join the university. Well, in high school, I can point several. Yeah, but the subjects that are outstanding that resonate with me so much, history for a fact, commerce, physics, and English. Those were my favorite subjects. I joined the University of Nairobi in October 1997 to study law. After finishing my high school education in Musingu, I spent an entire 4 years at the University of Nairobi, occasionally punctuated by other activities, not entirely education. I remember at one point in time during the long break after first year, I was recruited as a merchandiser to work for a food company by the name Kuguru Foods Complex. Then they just brought into the market a soft drink by the name Softa. And even whilst in the university studying law, I had to take up many other opportunities to enable myself make ends meet, pay part of my school fees, buy food, buy books, etc. I did a lot of teaching within this area. Little did I know that I'll end up buying premises in Parklands and establish my office here. I used to teach students from the Asian community in the afternoon. Occasionally, I could get a recorder and give it to my friend to record the classes if my teaching schedule coincided with my class schedule. And I was able to make a coin to sustain me during my stay at the university. I graduated from the University of Nairobi in 2001 with a degree in law. When I joined the University of Nairobi, there were several of our colleagues who were ahead of me who were quite outstanding. I will start with Amason Kingi, who is now the governor of Kilifi. I met him at the University of Nairobi. I will also speak about Baira Mongaya, who incidentally was my library prefect when I was in Musingu. Baira Mongaya is a judge in the Employment and Labor Relations Court. Also within that class, we have Francis Andayi, who was the dormitory prefect for the house below mine. I was in Madaraka, yet Francis Andayi was in Taifa. Then there is Professor Tia Waris, who is a distinguished law lecturer at the University of Nairobi, to mention just but a few. In my class, several of us have distinguished ourselves in our respective fields. Many of my colleagues are in the state law office. Some are in the office of the Director of Public Prosecution. Others are in private business. Others are private practitioners. For instance, Mr. Mutinda, a senior state counsel in the office of the Attorney General, was my classmate. James Moria of Centum was my classmate, amongst many other. But I'll be failing if I didn't disclose to you that fellows in Oriri, my landlord and my wife, was my classmate. So this, amongst many other people I remember meeting at Parkland's campus. Grace Obamo, my mother, and Josphat Obamo, my father, were militant disciplinarians. They brought us up, 6 of us, my elder sister and my siblings behind me, in very great Christian family values. And I think it is because of their determination that I am here. You know, in English, there is a term called truant. In Kiswahili, mtoto kiburi. I think I was a truant in my early childhood. And were it not for the close-knit, elaborate fabric that determined my early childhood on account of good parenting, family values, morals, I would not have excelled here. And for that reason, family plays a fundamental role, because the entire nation is constituted of the family, the society, and eventually the nation. And it is to that extent, therefore, that I get a lot of pride from the upbringing of my parents. Of course, my dad died when I was very young. I just joined Form 1. And that is indicative of the fact that irrespective of the problems that you find yourself in, if parents are determined to ensure that their children get a good future, they will get it. My mother, a primary school teacher who was widowed at the age of 32, ensured that all of us attained not only basic education, primary and secondary, we all attained university education. And you can see the importance of a value-oriented family. I have a family. My wife is a lawyer. We went to school together at the University of Nairobi. She doesn't go to court, but she practices in what we call the corporate world. She's a great pillar in what I do, because the nature of my work is very tumultuous. And what better way to complement yourself than through a spouse who understands your role, who understands the problems you have to confront, and who gives you motivation on how to achieve your goals. I will consider myself as an all-round student during my time at the University of Nairobi. But there are certain subjects that you will never forget. Like, I'll never forget the social foundation of law, a subject that was taught by Professor Jackton Ojwang. And in our class, or speaking for myself, I'll always remember the unit where he talked about the stratification, how a society is categorized. And he could fondly refer to another professor of law by the name Talcott Parsons. At one point in time, we had nicknamed Professor Jackton Ojwang Professor Talcott Parsons. Of course, again, we have a subject like jurisprudence. This is the science of law. How do you find the law? How do you apply the law? What are the theories of law? This was taught to me by Professor Kivuza Kibwana, a very down-to-earth lecturer, and is still a down-to-earth person. I remember often we could walk with Professor Kibwana from Parklands to Maine in the evening. There are also other lecturers that I cannot forget because they left an indelible mark in my career, like PLO Lumumba. Some people always say that I must be his brother because they claim we look alike. He taught me judicial review. Judicial review is a subject that is often practiced. It is not theoretical because it is the subject that enables lawyers prepare to examine, challenge, and deal with decisions that are made by the government or governmental departments. Of course, civil procedure, because every distinguished law practitioner must be well versed in the procedure of court as well as evidence. Now in civil procedure, I remember my teacher, now Judge of the Court of Appeal, Stephen Kairiru Gatembu. Evidence I was taught by my teacher and good friend, Chialo Mbobu. But I can't forget the Grand Mullah who taught me conflict of laws in my fourth year. I can't exhaust all the subjects we learned there. I can't exhaust all the teachers, but I acknowledge the role they played towards molding me to become a good lawyer and eventually a leader as I am today. My childhood was punctuated with a lot of adventure. I was very adventurous. I used to conduct so many experiments. I could say I was both science and art oriented. I had an affinity for machines, engines, and what. The decision to study law crystallized perhaps maybe during my Form 2 as I was transiting to Form 3, because at that particular point in time that you had to choose from the elective subjects that you had started with from Form 1. And for me, the choice was between art and design, which choice was leveraged against commerce. My commerce teacher, Stanley Muzame, and my art and design teacher, Patrick Mwachi, ended up becoming, so to speak, sworn enemies because I was a very good artist. Patrick Mwachi wanted me to excel in art. Stanley Muzame thought, for whatever reason, that I will make a good lawyer and perhaps I should take commerce as a foundation upon which to propel myself in preparation to selecting what I will eventually study in law. And I tilted in favor of the decision to take commerce and eventually study law. We have had 48 chairs and presidents of the Law Society before me, all who, I must say, are distinguished because you don't get elected chair or president of the Law Society unless you have something on you, something to show your demonstrable ability to serve the people. But even in the long list, there are chairs and presidents who are outstanding. I always pick Paul Mwite, Gibson Kamau Kuria, Dr. Willie Mutunga, amongst the generation of the chairs during the 80s and the 90s. After that generation, the next that I can pick, of course, I will start with my teacher and friend, Ahmed Nasser Abdullahi. His tenure as chair of the Law Society was very impactful. We have Senator Okongo Mogeni, also very impactful. He served at a time that was very pivotal, almost comparable to mine, because this was the preparatory process towards the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution. Many of the gains you see in the justice sector were effected with the active participation of Okongo Mogeni, then as president of the Law Society of Kenya. Then there is Professor Tom of Gender, whose contribution in the legal fraternity and the entire public insofar as the rule of law is concerned, cannot be omitted. Then we move towards the recent most generation. I will comfortably say that I get a lot of motivation from Eric Mutua, and I can now categorize those as some of the outstanding leaders of the Law Society who I looked upon when I said I also want to serve as president of the Law Society. I entered the training and eventually the practice of law in predominantly commercial litigation-oriented firms. I started my practice as a lawyer in a big firm, Raffman, Danji, Elms and Vardy, which incidentally is just across here at Museum Hill within Westlands constituency. Thereafter, I went to a firm by the name MMC, Mungai, and all these firms were predominantly commercial litigation oriented. Now, most of what is done by distinguished commercial law lawyers is never publicized unless it is something that is of great national importance over and above being a commercial dispute. So whilst at Mungai, I can mention the recovery process that was initiated when Uchumi first went down. I believe that was the major brief that we handled whilst I was at Mungai. Very few people know my history as a commercial litigation lawyer. I believe many look at me as the lawyer who challenges decisions of government in court, and appropriately so. And what was my debut in this sector of the practice of law? At one point in time in 2007, a friend of mine was conflicted in a brief. Then he decided to send the client to me. The client was the then MP for Juja, William Kabogo Gitau. And the reference was not in respect of a matter of controversy as I have come to be defined by the cases I do. It was a land matter which I did effectively. Then as we went for the election in December 2017, you know what happened. There was widespread rigging in almost the entire country. So my friend William Kabogo, I can't say he lost, his election was stolen by somebody else. We teamed up with Feroz Nauriji and we teamed up with James Orengo in the beginning to do the drafting, because again, it is Kabogo who had introduced me to James Orengo during the crackdown on Mungiki by Honorable Michuki. So then I used to do the drafting, then Orengo goes to court. So this time, the petitions were overwhelming on the part of Orengo, so he told me, you draft this, we'll work together on that. But as you're all aware, the National Accord was negotiated and signed in February when we were busy preparing for these election petitions. And the file landed on my desk. So I inherited the brief from James Orengo and successfully prosecuted the petition against the then PNU chief whip, the late George Thuo, and won. And this decision, I think it must have been the second one in a series of decisions that invalidated elections of members of parliament during that time. The first one must have been the one of Omingo Magara and Manson Nyamweya. So this was the second one. So this, in my view, was the landmark decision that propelled me into public interest litigation. Thereafter, I've done many other cases. I've handled the first case of Miguna when he was ebbed out as the advisor of the then Prime Minister Raila Odinga. You know, the principals all had advisors. President Mwai Kibaki had Professor Kivuda Kibwana as his advisor. Right Honorable Raila Odinga had Miguna, and they were in the level of permanent secretary. But for whatever reason, they chose to remunerate Professor Kibwana better than Miguna. And therein began the problem, amongst many other issues. We successfully handled Miguna's case in court, but as has been the practice of all those in office, they didn't comply with the decision to have Miguna take back his job. Fast forward, pick it from 2017 towards now, I've handled so many matters of great public interest. I've handled cases relating to officers in the judiciary, like Mr. Kagoni, the magistrate who was vilified and castigated because of a decision he had made. I've acted for the Deputy Chief Justice, Philomena Betemwelu. Yeah, I've acted for the people of Kenya insofar as the curfew is concerned, insofar as many administrative decisions are concerned, insofar as the transgressions of Parliament and the Executive, fundamental of which we can say the dissolution of Parliament and the attempt to amend the Constitution through the now infamous BBI bill. That, in a nutshell, is an indicator of my career. 17 years is not a short period of time, so that's the length of my career as a practitioner in court. This case, the BBI, I remember saying, perhaps if we finish BBI, I should retire from active practice, because it was the most involving of the cases that I ever handled. And look, BBI had brought about a raft of changes, the effect of which was to destroy the entire Constitution. And it's not a matter in which we can say that this group will benefit and this group will lose. It was a matter that, if looked at it from a good governance perspective, was going to destroy the entire framework of the Kenyan Constitution, the entire foundation of the democracy we enjoy. And I looked at it from this perspective. Do I want, by the time I'm as old as 74, to be asked, Havi, these changes were made when you were in the prime of your career, when you had all the energy, as did Nelson Mandela when he decided to confront atrocity of the apartheid regime? What did you do? Or even when I'm dead, what will people say about me? This happened during the reign of Nelson Havi as president of the Law Society of Kenya. I said, no, I don't want that history to be written about me. And of course, when the High Court delivered its decision on the 13th of May, declaring the BBI bill as unconstitutional, I was full of joy. And I believe my joy was indicative of the joy of many Kenyans who saw through what was happening. And again, on the 20th of August 2021, when the Court of Appeal affirmed the decision of the High Court, I was equally overwhelmed with joy. Often when I walk around here in Parklands, in Kangemi, in Kitusuru, in Loresho, people will tell me, Havi, you saved us from a lot of trouble. What you did by bringing down BBI is something that we are very grateful for. And there's greater joy when people tell you that they're happy, that as a result of your initiative, your struggle and sacrifice, they are grateful. When I was in Nangili Primary School, it happened to be the time that the famous case of SM Otieno was in the court corridors. There were these two gentlemen, one Dr. John Haminwa and another one Richard Otieno Kwach. And the mastery, then to me it was a mastery of the English language, the ability to use good words really motivated me. And I didn't know at one point in time I'll ever meet these two. They're now my very good friends. In fact, they are my lawyers. One day, I was telling Justice Richard Otieno Kwaj, you know, when I was in class 6, you guys were handling the SM Otieno case. When I was in class 7, going to class 8, you were seated as a judge in a commission of inquiry about the disappearance and the gruesome murder of Dr. Robert Oko. So those two, from the beginning, are the ones that I will say came out as role models of distinguished lawyers. I've worked hand in hand in many cases with James Orengo Senior Counsel, and the gentleman is just marvelous because his ability to conceptualize the problem in a case, especially a public interest case, matters that relate to human rights, matters that relate to the Constitution, is unparalleled. And I've worked with James Orengo since 2007. We've won many cases, we've lost some, but insofar as my trajectory to handle cases that relate to what makes people suffer most, what demands accountability against the government, the most outstanding is James Orengo. I wouldn't find anybody who nears James Orengo. Of course, there are many other lawyers who have had an indelible mark in my career. I will be failing if I fail to mention my pupil master, Mr. Salim Danji. We used to call him Mr. D. He gave me a lot of motivation when I joined the training of law as a pupil then. I remember at one point in time, a few weeks after I'd enrolled for pupillage in 2001, must have been in October, his first brief to me was a case concerning policemen, 3 in particular, that had been charged with murder. When we were at the University of Nairobi, it must have been 1997, there was a university student from USIU who was killed in very mysterious circumstances by the police. So eventually, we went to the streets, and there was a lot of chaos. Several years later, I'm being given an assignment to defend these 3 policemen. And when I told Salim Danji I can't defend them, he told me, hey, listen, young man, you're no longer a university student, you're a defense counsel. Take the file, prepare, and move on. Again, at Salim Danji and Company, there was a gentleman we used to call NR, Njoroge Regeru. Cases abound where you'll find judges speaking very fondly of Njoroge Regeru, where at one point a judge said, Mr. Regeru, in his usual learned ways, submitted as follows. I learned most of my drafting skills and swag from Njoroge Regeru. Maybe sometimes people say Havi is overbearing, Havi is arrogant. Perhaps they should go and just have a few minutes discussion with my former pupil master, Njoroge Regeru. A distinguished draftsman, a distinguished courtroom lawyer, because the practice of law is both an act and an art. Look, in the recent past, Julie Soweto has had a very big impact in the manner in which I practice, in the drafting. Incidentally, I found Julie at Salim Danji when I joined that firm to do pupillage. So these are the lawyers that I will be failing if I failed to speak about Feroz Norji, a brilliant mind. He always told me, whatever your mind conceives of as a lawyer, as a solution to a problem. It must have been handled before. So dig into it. It will give you an insight on how best to do it. The world leaders that motivated me are many. We'll start with Vladimir Lenin, the one who was in charge of the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. I will proceed to speak about Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro, through the system of governance. And he went to the bushes after he was done in bringing down the regime of Baptista. He brought civility to Cuba, a country that flourished substantially during his time. Nelson Mandela, John F. Kennedy, and Barack Obama. These are world leaders that I think give good beacons upon which anybody who wants to excel in leadership must look upon to. Incidentally, the democratic space seems to have found a lot of foundation in the law society as opposed to the national government. In the law society, the president only serves for one term of 2 years. So my term comes to an end on the 24th of March, 2022. After the Law Society of Kenya, I propose to serve the people of Kenya in Parliament. I wish to be in a position to serve through Westlands constituency. The realization that came to me of the need to get into elective politics, national politics, is the limitations of what can be done through litigation. How little you can achieve through your office as president of the Law Society, through your profession as an advocate. And many Kenyans may not want to interrogate in depth the fundamental role Parliament plays or fails to play insofar as good governance is concerned. Because Parliament has been given 3 key roles. One is to make laws. Look at the laws we've had in the last 5 years. Almost all of them get successfully challenged in court. Why? Because of the caliber of individuals we elect into Parliament. Many of them are not selfless. For them, provided that the problem is not within my vicinity, then it's not one that will concern me. I want to go to the National Assembly and do my part as a legislator to ensure that the people of Kenya, and in particular the people of Westlands, on whose behalf I would have been elected into Parliament, benefit from good laws. Look at the current state of the economy right now in Kenya. Taxation is high. Why? Because our elected leaders passed laws to enable the high taxation. Fuel levy is high, again because of the inability of our elected representatives to look into this matter. What about pandemic response? Kenya has the most transformative constitution. Countries that are in the same level as Kenya, insofar as constitutionalism and democracy is concerned, put in place laws to make provision for the problems that arise as a result of a pandemic. Look at the Higher Education Loans Board. The youth exiting universities are required to have a raft of certificates before they are employed. And then when this matter comes to Parliament, for them to be given a reprieve insofar as interest is concerned, parliamentarians deny. You understand? Now, you've seen, you as Kenyans, you as the people of Westlands, what I've done on the occasions that I've appeared in Parliament to speak on a memorandum on some of these issues that I've just enumerated. And I can say With tremendous success, we've been able to hold Parliament accountable. With this background, I stand better placed to serve the people of Westlands in the National Assembly to ensure that they get good laws, because Westlands is a cosmopolitan constituency in many aspects. It has the middle class, it has the upper class, it has the lower class. It has the highest concentration of a multiracial community. The businesses here are vast. The best hospitals are in Westlands. The biggest telecommunication companies are in Westlands, Safaricom and Airtel, to mention just but a few. And we also have so many other people in Westlands. For instance, in Kangemi, in Mountain View, and the other low-end dwellings that need to be integrated. And this can only be done through effective legislation that takes into account the needs of all the people despite the diversity. So that is one function. Another function is national revenue allocation. This is a function that is given to an elected member of parliament. If you look at the allocation of revenue in this country, is it equitable? Why is it that there is disparity? How can we, as the people of Westlands, say we have been represented in revenue allocation? Again, that is something which we have tried through litigation, through other avenues, but there is only much that we can achieve, because the primary role of ensuring that this is done effectively and appropriately is given to an elected member of the National Assembly. Another item which is pivotal insofar as representation of any people, and in this particular sense I'm talking about the people of Kenya and the people of Westlands, is oversight of the executive. To what extent does the executive follow the Constitution when it's making appointments to public offices? Does it take into account gender, ethnicity, regional balance, amongst many other considerations? We've been to court time without number when decisions, insofar as appointments are concerned, which decisions have been approved by Parliament, have been successfully challenged by applicants in court. Where were our parliamentarians at that particular point in time? And when the people of Westlands, those who were born, those who live, those who work, those who stay or study, those who have interests here, to be given that opportunity where this oversight is undertaken effectively. And then there is one other aspect over and above those three fundamental issues that relates to poverty alleviation. And this is a function that is given to the member of National Assembly on a well-elaborate framework together with a kitty called the Constituency Development Fund. Now, this fund is not intended to better areas that are already good. For instance, you can't use CDF to come and build a wall around a police station, because that's a function of the national government. You understand? CDF is intended to enable the development of schools, hospitals, markets in areas like Kangemi, in areas like Deep Sea, in areas like Kibagare, in areas like Mountain View, because poverty alleviation cannot be taken to a suburb that does not suffer poverty. Again, this is an issue which the people of Westlands are entitled to see that they're adequately represented. In a nutshell, those four main points are the ones that dovetailed my ambition to run with a view to representing the people of Westlands in particular, and the people of Kenya in general in the National Assembly.